Hey, Jarrett. Hey, Jen.
Hey,
So we are on YouTube right now, it looks like,
we are. I just
just
set us up and we've got a few attendees that have already joined.
okay, good. I will be right back unless I logged on right now, although I have something I got to go do, but I wanted to see if you needed anything from me immediately at this moment, or if in 5 minutes I'll be back.
That sounds perfect. I'm glad you guys joined. It just confirms it's all working. Thank you.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I fixed your name, Jarrett.
Thank you.
Those little quotes that were bugging me.
Yeah. Why don't you just figure out this weird haircut Zoom's giving me?
Yeah, I thought maybe
Kinda
you went
trippy,
got one
right?
today since the last time we
No.
talked.
It's very weird. Hey, Elodie.
Hello. I just sent you a message asking, are we all changing our backgrounds or just the people speaking?
I think everyone is, right? Is that part of the fun?
If you have the ability, you can. I unfortunately have not been able to figure that out on my computer.
No, we're gonna leave you out.
That's fine. I've made you co-host, Elodie, as well as the mayor, and
Awesome, thank you.
I don't know if that changed anything, but just keeping you posted.
Elodie, are you waiting until we get started to put the new page up on the site?
Yes, I'm gonna do the switcheroo. It's all ready. I
Okay,
just don't
yeah,
want
it's all
anybody
ready.
to like log on trying to get onto the webinar and see it early.
Get a sneak peek.
Yeah.
Right. 1, 2. Oops. Let's see.
It's funny with the two of us next to each other. It looks like the mountains are just like going on forever.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was telling Jen it looks like they gave me a haircut somehow. It's just very weird.
Hey, you don't need your hat anymore.
I know. Actually, maybe I should put the hat back on. It's funny, converging mountains, huh? It's weird. I don't know why it does that thing where it flips it. You know what I mean? Where it mirrors.
For you
It's so
guys.
strange.
on-
Yeah, it's so strange.
Yeah.
I think based on TikTok, which I know is a very reliable source, but people
Yeah.
freak out when they see themselves like the right way around, the way people
Yeah.
see them. So I think they just mirror you so that you don't look at yourself and say,
Yeah.
"What was that?"
No, that makes sense because there's a button I think to change it to like mirror the view,
Mhm.
but your face looks really weird.
Yeah.
Elodie, you got that link to the YouTube?
Oh, I haven't. What,
Oh,
can you
okay.
send
I
me?
sent it just a couple minutes ago. I'm just going to put it on our homepage as well, just in case.
Oh no, I haven't gotten anything.
Oh, you didn't. Let's try this again. I'm glad I said something.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I see what I did wrong, so you should get it now.
Okay. I see it.
Okay. Hi, Elodie.
Hello.
Oh, I need to put on my background. There we go. Okay. Hi, Elodie.
Hi.
That's weird. Why is there a delay?
That might be me.
Okay.
There wasn't a delay. I just might have an extra screen open that I left open.
Okay.
It's not me. Does somebody else?
Oh, that was me. Okay.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay.
It sometimes is a function of being the host and
Mm.
setting up the YouTube and all that. Oops, I'm on 2 different computers.
So will we be seeing attendees or participants, Jan? You are muted. Panelists. So we'll be seeing panelists. Jen, if you're talking to us, you have to unmute. I don't know if you are talking to us.
Thank you. I was.
Okay.
So yes, we will only be seeing the panelists.
Okay.
Attendees are not visual,
All right.
but they'll be able to use the chat.
Right. Okay, good. It's going to be a little, I'm talking to people we've already talked to about this.
Uh-huh.
So it's a little bit different than
I already
talking
know
to,
all this.
yeah, you know all about this. Well, I can see that we have a few attendees already, friends of the town and members of our community. I'll just have a shout out before, since it's a little bit before we get started, to Adrian and Josh and Corpse, Ryan, Stuart Sillaway is here. All right. Okay, I see the chat comment, and I'll put it in here. Okay, so that went to all the panelists. One thing we might want to consider is the chat should. What did the attendees see on a chat?
Oh,
I've set it up so that they should see the same thing that we do.
Panelists and attendees.
Mhm.
Okay.
Unless you had an option to only communicate with the panelists when you
I
made your
have
chat.
two choices. I can
Yep.
I can communicate to panelists, or I can communicate in the chat to panelists and attendees.
When the attendees type in, it should go to the panelists and the attendees, to everybody.
Okay.
It's
good.
just, you have that superpower to only communicate with the panelists if you want.
inside.
But we'll try not to do
info.
that, I think.
Right. Yes. Okay. And I will open up my texting capability as well. Okay.
Hello,
Hi, Don.
how are you?
Good.
Hi, Don.
Hi. It sounds like Sarah may show up.
Oh, cool.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
hey, Dawn, have you, you don't have Cecil's number, do you? Let me text him and see if he's okay.
Yeah.
I sent him all the stuff. I just want to make sure he can connect.
Jen, did you pause the recording on purpose? It says
Me?
recording pause. I don't know what that means. Okay,
Yeah, I don't want to record all this.
that sounds great.
Yeah.
This is just the fun stuff beforehand. When we actually start, I'll hit that.
Hi, Masha. So, Don, you're gonna, once I introduce you, you'll introduce your team.
Sure.
Okay. What's your formal title, Don?
Partner.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. So Dan Cecil said he's all set.
Okay. Excellent.
But he's not here.
Yeah. Is he in another meeting?
Yeah. I just texted him again.
Hey, Chris.
Hello, Chris. You're muted in case you are actually wanting to say something.
Hello, Jarrett and Mayor.
Hey,
All right.
there he is.
Thanks, Ryan, for the feedback on the chat. Appreciate that.
Hey, Dan.
Hey,
Hi, Dan. Nice to
Hi.
meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for all of your help on this project.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. It's an exciting one.
You can't show Dan an avalanche he doesn't fall in love with.
Get excited about.
It depends on your perspective when you're having
Indeed.
an avalanche.
Yeah, fair enough.
You'd rather have the above perspective than the below perspective, right?
Right. Right. Hi, Nikki. Good to see you.
Good to see everyone too. How is everyone doing?
Good.
Good.
Thanks for all of your contributions to this project.
Well,
I haven't had the chance to say that to you before.
well, it's been awesome working with this team of people, and everyone has brought such different perspectives and points of views that it's really been an amazing group. And Jarrett's team has listened to us, and every time we have something, have come back and exceeded the expectations that we've had. So I think all around it's been a really enjoyable experience.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
John's got a cooler background. What's going on, John?
That's the
I
list.
I just moved a little bit. That's what you get by moving 5 feet to the left.
It's the top of one of our ski lifts.
I have a totally lame background.
Well, mine was too bright, so I had to do something to change it.
Well, Masha just sent it to me. Let's see if I can download it.
And John, you have to participate in the blue wave we've got going on here.
I got a little bit of blue in the upper left-hand corner.
You get a little bit, yeah. Some clouds.
I could see that view from where my head would be.
Harris, we didn't talk about this, but do you want to have when do you want me to pull the PDF up? Do you want me to have it on when you're talking, or do you want to be full screen? We didn't rehearse this bit.
No. For my opening, let's just leave it
Okay.
this way. And then, and by the way, I don't think I saw an updated version of it mailed to me as the backup plan. So I only have the version from this morning.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Okay. So if you want to email it to me just as a potential backup for screen sharing.
Yeah, Elodie, would you mind? It's in the, or someone on the server. It's just called Final.
Okay, and I don't,
So-
I won't need it for a few minutes, but
Yeah.
all right. Well, I think we should probably get started. I think we're now a minute after 5 o'clock, and I just let me introduce what we're doing. This is the rollout of a feasibility study of an Alta community center from Ennead Architects, and I'm pretty excited about this. There are a lot of tasks that come to me as mayor. It's when you run for mayor, I don't think you know what you're getting yourself into. And there are a lot of things that need to be managed. And some of them are quite challenging and some of them are really fun. I think this is the most excited I've been about one of our projects and one of the most fun things that I've done, rather than putting out fires or negotiating with our fire service about how to put out fires. We're actually going to be talking about building something new. What I'm going to do now is introduce this hour's discussion. Then I'll talk something about the goals and the need for a community center. A couple people will join me in making presentations about that. Then I'll introduce the architect who and the architecture team that produced this feasibility study for us. And they will talk about the processes and challenges and opportunities that they faced in developing this feasibility study. And then they'll talk about the design concepts and outcomes and make a recommendation of how we could proceed. And then I'll conclude. Okay, so why talk about a community center? People who live in Alta and people who don't live in Alta, who visit us, love Alta. People who live in Alta need a place to gather that is multi-purpose and not a room where they're living or a bar where they may be going to have a drink after skiing, but a place that has more dimensions than either of those kinds of locations does, and has more ability to have more people in it. People who don't live in Alta don't know that there's much of a place in Alta. We know that, those of us who do live here in the place that's shown behind some of us on the screen. Place building is community building, and physical architecture defines a place. And so a community center is an integral part of what we could do to make our place more vibrant. Having a community center has been an aspiration for our community for decades. If you look on our town website under the general plan and studies tab, you'll see that going back into the 80s, there's been a discussion of having a community center as a social and cultural hub for Alta, and for having various kinds of mixed uses, including a place for our post office to be at the same, a place where you can go pick up your mail and have a cup of coffee with a friend, a place perhaps where you can drop off your kids and then take a yoga class on your own, a place where you can park and start a hike, a place with a public restroom. All ideas that Alta has embraced over the years. This is not a controversial issue in Alta, unlike many of the issues that we do face. This is not a wicked problem. This is just a problem that we need to address. It was one of my aspirations in running for mayor, and I'm now in the 4th year of this term, and I am thrilled to be able to share this with you. Why this architecture term? Ennead is an architecture term that has global reach. They submitted a proposal like the other firms who did that. We had a pretty good group to select from. It's true that I reached out to them and made sure that they saw the request for proposal. And I did that because I know that they have world-class capability. They have not only very interesting projects, but they have a very interesting division called the Ennead Lab, where they take on projects that my perception of this is projects that they know they can learn something interesting and important for the rest of their practice, even if they aren't going to make a lot of money on it. And I have a feeling that while we weren't really part of the Ennead Lab, I think that this project in some ways fits that description. They've learned a lot about avalanches, for example, and I don't think they're coming away having made a lot of money. I learned about Ennead and alerted them about the RFP because Sarah George introduced me to the firm. Sarah was the executive director of the Utah Museum of Natural History when the building in the research park was built, and Ennead Ennead Architects and Don Weinrich, their one of their partners, was the lead design team in building that building. And the Rio Tinto Center, as it's called, to my mind, is the most interesting building in the state of Utah. And the opportunity to request a proposal from this firm was an exciting one. I think that their proposal was the most exciting, with broad perspective and without any particular agenda. Just to contrast it with one of the others that we received, they talked about how much they know Alta and how much they love Alta and how much they like to do X, Y, and Z activities in Alta. And it seemed to me that having an outside perspective was actually an asset for this process, an advantage to this process. Then finally, we put together an advisory committee. John Goldner was really the principal staff person. Jen Clancy, I have to thank you for all of the hard work you've done on this project as well. And as Chris Cawley and Piper Lever were also involved. But we put together an advisory committee from our community. And why having this advisory committee? Well, Sarah Gibbs, who is the director of ACE, knows our community's needs intimately. And I don't know if there's a more central person in the various sets of networks amongst the people in Alta and our community writ large. Nikki Henderson is the school teacher at the school, and she knows our family's needs probably as well as anyone, or better than anyone. Mike Mon was the third member of our advisory group. He runs our largest business and employs the most. He's our largest employer, and he's involved in the transportation and other planning aspects of what's going on in Little Cottonwood Canyon and in Alta. And finally, longtime resident Jerry Weil, who lives in the Blackjack, is a sophisticated, given his professional background, he is very sophisticated with interpersonal processes. So it seemed to me that he would be a good team member as well. Okay, so that's my introduction. The next thing I'd like to do is ask, I don't know that Sarah, I know that Sarah prepared a video. Is that what we're going to see, Jen?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have a video presentation from Sarah because she couldn't make it live at the moment. And then we'll hear from Nikki Henderson, who's here with us tonight. Jen, are you going to start the video or should I do that?
I'm ready.
Okay.
And
hello, my name is Sarah Gibbs, and I am the Director of Alta Community Enrichment. I have been involved with the planning of a community center since about 2009. And I've been involved for over a year with this feasibility study with Ennead Architects from New York City. The need for a community center is more than just a building where we can have events and yoga and meetings and art displays and a school. Some of the need for the community center is in order to provide a sense of community for our town. Alta is known worldwide, but 98% of those people don't even know that Alta is a town with a mayor and a post office and a school and nonprofits and residents. And this building will not only provide a space for our people that live, work, and play in Little Cottonwood Canyon to have a space for events and productions and meetings and office spaces, yoga, but it will help provide a sense of place for our residents and visitors. When people come flying up our highway at 50 miles an hour, maybe they'll see this building and a walkway across the highway to it and slow down and possibly realize that there is a town and people that live there. This building will also create an amazing sense of place for our residents and our locals. We're a building where you could walk in and get your mail and maybe a cup of coffee and sit and chat with fellow community members, go browse our library and look at the display of environmental information, historical information, or local art. A place where you can maybe create relationships with people in town that you might not already have, or meet up with a friend and go get your mail and have a cup of coffee. I really hope that this building creates a sense of place and also offers opportunities for local businesses to have larger events and local teachers to teach different culinary, art, and health and well-being classes. Alta is an interactive community, and providing a space for people to interact will be very helpful for our town. Working with Ennead has been very positive, and they are very good at listening, at hearing what people are saying. Didn't matter what tip you gave them or what you believed the community center should be or should not be. They listened, they heard, and they acknowledged. And it's been a pleasure working with them. I know it's been a long road for them, and I thank them for all that they've done. And I am looking forward to watching this webinar when I am back. So thank you for your time.
Okay, so thanks to Sarah for preparing that ahead of time, and I echo a number of her observations and enthusiasms. I would point out that the speed limit in the town of Alta is 25, not 50, just in case anybody has forgotten that. And I should have said something about the chat function early when we first started. Any attendees should have access to the chat. We aren't necessarily going to be able to address comments or questions in the real time, but we will be saving them and we will be able to address them going forward if we don't get to them this evening. Okay, the next person to speak is going to be Nikki Henderson, who is our school teacher.
Hi, I'll start by just introducing myself to those of you who don't know who I am. I am Nikki Henderson, and I have been the school teacher for the past 9 years. So I am going to be speaking for the voice of the future generation of Little Cottonwood Canyon and how the community center would affect their needs in our community. I've been working on this study with the team for about a year, and I have to piggyback off of so much of what Sarah has said about working with Ennead. They've been a pleasure to work with, but the thing that I admired most about working with this group is that from day one, they wanted to get a sense of our community, and their number one priority before they started diving into this project was hearing who our community is, what our community wants. And throughout this whole entire process, they have always turned it back to the needs of our community, where it would have been a lot easier for them to say, hey, this is what we came up with. But they, every time we had a concern, they really met that need for us. And as anyone knows, there's a lot of perspectives and a lot of opinions in the town of Alta, and they worked with all of those perspectives, all of those opinions. So it's been a pleasure to work with them, and thank you for everything that you've done. Next, I also want to thank the gold miner's daughter for providing a spot for the school for so many years. Without this spot, the school would not be possible in our community. And they have provided, and because everyone knows how hard getting a space is in the town, we are in their basement, which also comes with a lot of limitations and things that people in the community probably don't even see. So I'm just going to kind of address some of those limitations about the school and for the kids. And one of the biggest limitations is that after school, there's nowhere for these kids to congregate, to get together. A lot of times they end up going to the GMD rec room. They like to go to the Alta Lodge tea time. They like to go to the Snow Pine for their cookies. And as much as our town likes to accommodate to the students and to the kids of Alta, these amenities are for the guest. And a lot of times they have to ask the kids to leave. So Sarah talked a lot about the sense of place, and our kids don't really have that sense of place after school hours because, you know, I have so much that I have to get done that they can't really hang out in the classroom after the school hours, and they have no place to really get together. So that's one of the biggest things that I hear from our families all the time, is that they have a need for an area for the kids just to gather, to feel accepted in those places. The other things that I would like to bring up is that the school often gets kind of, we're in this in-between area, as we're through the Canyon School District, but we're located in the town of Alta. And where our location is now, sometimes it feels like it can be an out of sight, out of mind. So the Canyon School District doesn't see what's happening in our classroom all the time. And a lot of our town doesn't even know the school exists because we're not being seen. And a lot of our needs actually have to get provided from the gold miners. So, you know, they put a whole heating system in our classroom last year when our heating system went. And that was a fault of the Canyon School District and the original heating system that they had in their storage unit that they brought up to us. So I think if the school was in this community center, a lot of these needs would be seen and heard through the community, which I think would be great for the school. In the past 9 years that I've been here, we've had a lot of growth in the school, and we have with Ennead, they've put in some breakout rooms in the school where we can have a small group of kids learning in one area that's not affected by what's going on in the other area. Sorry, I'm just kind of looking over, making sure I'm hitting everything I want to talk about. The other big limitation about where we are located now, I think if we can all take something from this past year, COVID, is our emotional health. Since we're in the basement of a building, our windows get snowed in and we have no natural light, which when you go through all winter without natural light for 5 hours a day, it has an effect on the students' attitudes. I mean, we get outside as much as possible, but there's days when we can't get outside because of the weather, that just the natural light would provide so much for our kids and their mental health. So I thank everyone for hearing what from the perspective of the kids.
Thanks, Nikki. I appreciate those comments, especially since the school is and the school district, it would be an important component, is a important component of our community, and would be an important aspect of our community center for many of the reasons you just said. Okay, now I'd like to introduce the Ennead and in particular Don Weinrich, who is the partner with the firm. I'm going to share my screen and just show everybody one part of their website because I think it's really quite interesting. This is just one of their many projects. The Cape Horn Subantarctic Center is a research center in South America. And I just want to show everybody that they understand unusual environments and come up with very interesting designs. Breathtakingly beautiful and delicate landscape, and to have a good environmental footprint. That was a big part of what we were trying to accomplish. So, Don?
Great. Thank you very much, Harris, for the kind introductions, everyone. So I'm Don Weinrich. Hi, everybody. I'm a partner at Ennead. I've been with the firm quite a long time. I'm just going to kind of kick off what the design team is going to be talking to you about in just a couple of minutes. I myself have a particular interest that I can't really explain, having come from New York City, but I have a real interest and fascination in small and remote communities because they face unique challenges and because the citizenry is so interdependent. And I feel that these communities are often underserved by the design profession. So this project gave us an opportunity to really do a deep dive and work with the town of Alta. Small towns need a heart, a center, a place that supports and symbolizes the community's sense of itself. And we were very gratified to have an opportunity to investigate this on your behalf. We have a fantastic team that worked on this. I believe everyone is here tonight. Jarrett Pelletier, Elodie, Masha, Malachi, Stefan, Amy. I hope everyone can turn their cameras on a little bit and say hi. This group worked tirelessly and industriously all through the pandemic to produce the work that you're going to see tonight. Architects, to be an architect, you have to be an optimist. You have to believe in a future and a better future and things that are possible. And this team absolutely was just bubbling over with optimism. Our firm's history in Utah began, as Harris said, with the Utah Museum of Natural History, the Rio Tinto Center, which I was lucky enough to work on for a number of years. And in the course of working there, visited Alta a number of times and learned to ski at an embarrassingly old age, but never hurt myself and had a ball and saw one avalanche. We did not do this project that you're going to see alone. We worked with some amazing partners, Contour Group, who advised the town on avalanche risk. They're a local group. If you don't know them, they provided us, real insider information. Lyra, our structural consulting partner, and you'll hear from Dan in a little bit. Atelier 10, known nationally and internationally for their expertise in sustainability, worked with us. Shanta is here tonight as well, representing them. And of course, Big D, who I'm sure many of you know is one of the Salt Lake Valley's premier, if not the premier builder, advised us on local conditions and construction. So the partnership that produced the work that you're going to see really was amazing. The town was fantastic. The involvement of advisors and townsfolk, very persistent, really quite wonderful. And what came through to us was just how much the citizens of this town care about the town. So it's very hard not to do your best work when you have a client that knows that their needs are very important. Our process involved numerous workshops and we had good turnouts, good feedback. It was a very open process and we compliment the town for allowing such an open and democratic process with lots of debate and discussion. And in the end, what we were trying to get out of this process was understanding the unique site conditions and what the constraints were and the opportunities, develop a series of design concepts that the town got to kind of try on for size and tell us what best fit the town's sense of itself, and confirming what the budget for a project like this might be. So that is in essence what our project was, and I will turn it over to my colleague, Jarrett.
Thanks, Don. I want to take a moment and just orient everyone to the site. Many folks who participated in one of our many meetings know the site very well, but just a little context before we get started. The community center site has an amazing location at the center of town. You can see here on the map that the location is right along State Road 210, Littlewood Cottonwood Canyon Road. So as Sarah mentioned in her opening, you could kind of zip through the town and not really get a sense of its center. So the location is really great because it does begin to provide that center and a sense of place. In 2015, the United States Forest Service conveyed the parcel to the town. And it's a little over 1.2 acres. The site has many challenges. We're going to talk about some of those challenges tonight, among which are on one hand, the amazing location, on another hand, a very challenging location. I think this image sort of here shows it all. At the base of a really steep slope, this site is prone to avalanches, as many of the folks in Alta know and understand that more than we in New York do, but what we've come to learn and understand as being a real driver. Many of the other constraints are the length of the site along the highway. How do you create a building that's not in vehicular traffic? Many of the folks in the town of Alta know that there's a lot of traffic, especially during peak ski seasons. So thinking about how to sort of create a community center that has a sense of place but isn't inundated with traffic. We, as a part of our study, also communicated with UDOT to understand how the community center might liaise with some of the future transit that's been in discussions. We had meetings with them to understand how the community center parcel might fit into their plans, and to make sure that we weren't duplicating anything that they were thinking about. And early on, we talked about, well, should the community center have a portion of it, which is a transit center? And we quickly determined, no, it should not, because the size and scale of such a center would really dwarf the needs of the community. So that being said, I want to turn it over to my colleague, Dan Cecil, who's going to talk a little bit about how we begin to think about designing for a building in this location on such a steep slope, and for avalanche and earthquakes, which are of key concern. Dan, you want to take it away? Dan, are you talking? You might be on mute.
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, good. Thanks, Jarrett. Let me start by saying that I'm going to talk a little bit about criteria, but some of the criteria I'm going to present, this first image, for example, was produced by Contour Steve and his group, who were fantastic to work with, as with everyone on the team. Isn't with us tonight, so I'm gonna cover some of the material that he's produced. It has been critical to our work in shaping structural schemes, and then in turn shaping some of the architectural proposals that you're going to see. Don has also asked me to mention that in his introduction, he neglected to mention a couple of key team members, Karsten and Anders, who definitely need to be acknowledged because they were fantastic and working really hard for you and these results. So this first image is one that starts to superimpose, if you will, the imagery of avalanche paths onto the site. Right, the yellow is the piece of property. It shows something of some of them of the more prominent avalanche paths. And you can actually, of course, see it in the landscape. And sort of in the lack of trees and the like. It is an active site for avalanche. And if you go to the next image, this one's really interesting. It's a color coding. Blue represents lower impact forces from an avalanche. So you can pretty much see that this particular site is it. I mean, it's as active as it gets. So, and there's a scale there, which I'll talk a little bit more about on the right. So the blue is low, the red is high, and this is a mapping that Contour has done, again, that has helped inform our design work. That basically sets the impact pressures at the site for this building at about 370 kPa. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. That's a high number. That in terms of equivalent pressures is about 54 psi, or about 7,700 pounds per square foot. It's a very large impact number. And the other thing you'll notice is that it's pretty consistent across the site. It's not like you get a lot of relief when you get to one edge or another, or as if there's just one peak. It's pretty steady across the site when this mass is moving down the hill. And fundamentally, what we're talking about is the snow sitting on the mountain, of course, is stored potential energy, and it's a huge amount of potential energy. And the minute it's released, it becomes a dynamic kinetic energy that is just moving, and it's pretty constant across the width of the site. Next. When we started this, and even before Steve had done those maps, we had a number of conversations, Steve, just to talk about the general potential paths. And when we started it, we understood that there were likely to be 2 avalanche paths approaching the site. And again, we assumed it would be pretty constant across the site, which is why I drew 3 rosettes. And he had originally spoke about the possibility of a second type of avalanche coming a little bit more from the east, the northeast, and if that were to have been one of the avalanche paths that proved out, it was his feeling at the time that it would be a lower intensity event. In truth, that second type of event isn't a great consideration for us. But of course, that avalanche type A is. So the obvious sort of simple observation from these rosettes is that it's all coming from one side, obviously. And so you have the opposite side of the building has, with the exception of the suction pressures that occurs in the avalanche pass, is very much less affected by these events, which is a basic that informs the architecture ultimately. And that is, of course, the glass looking south is a clear outcome. The second thing about it is that these moving masses, fundamentally the forces that they impose on the building, is really associated with the energy required to redirect. So it's a fluid, it's moving downhill. The image on the right shows the kinds of deflection forces that you would see on a wall, and the image on the left shows the kind of deflection forces that you would see on a roof. At this site, we're carrying about a 30-degree angle relative to the roof line from the slope above. And so that actually is a good thing. It's pretty much a function of the sine of the angle. And so we are only having to carry the downward load of about 50% of those impact pressures. Next. Earthquake, just a few words about it. what you'll notice is that when you're in the city of Salt Lake, there's a number of faults. Could you just hold that for a second? I just want to go back for just a second to be quick. The closest one is the Wasatch Fault zone along sort of the edge of the mountain line there. But most of the active faults are still to the west of that line. So that's actually a good thing. So if you go to the next one, what I've plotted here for you for scale purposes is these are SS values. These are short period spectral acceleration lines factored up by 100 just so that they're readable. And what you'll notice is that the intensity of seismic events, strong ground motions in the city of Salt Lake are about twice as high as we would expect to see in Alta. Okay, so next. So then we said, let's put this in scale for people. The difference between the seismic force that would be seen by the building and the deflection force, and this is reduced by 50% from the avalanche. So that's the number on the right, 92,000 kips, and that's 92 million pounds of downward force on the roof, is associated with redirecting that force. The seismic event is almost 1/100th of that. It's an order. It's almost 2 orders of magnitude smaller. So so I wanted to put that in perspective, how significant an event this really is. And the next slide says something I think that's even more important. And that is that the probability of exceedance is quite high. That is, the avalanche we're talking about is likely to occur in your lifetimes. The earthquake design force is actually is a very rare event. It's about a 2,500 year event. So an event that might have that earthquake event might have a 2% chance of exceedance in 50 years. You have nearly 40% chance of exceedance in 50 years for this 100-year event. And that tells us 2 things that are really important. One is the first thing that I pointed out, and that is that you're likely to see it. And the second thing is that when we design for it, we have to design for the structure to perform elastically through it. We can't design for failure. Earthquake design criteria is organized around, since it's such a rare event, the code permits you to design actually for failure. There's a 10% chance of collapse in an MCE following the building code. We can't permit that. So we're looking at a really large event with a high probability of occurrence, and we're designing to carry those loads safely through within the elastic ranges, meaning nothing in the structure fails. And that has really colored, I think, how we've come to the set of recommendations that we've come to. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to you, Jarrett.
Thanks, Dan. I think that's really helpful, and I think it's all good information to keep in mind as we go through the feasibility study and the design process and design recommendations. But first, I wanted to just take a moment to talk a little bit about our community engagement process. I do have to say, Don mentioned, we started this project at the beginning of the pandemic, and I think I can speak for a lot of the folks on my team that it's been a delight to really dig in and get to know everyone and understand Alta and the spirit of the place. I think it's been for us, a lot of us who've been sort of stuck in apartments for a very long time. It's been a really a breath of fresh air that we all needed. So thank you for that. We've learned a lot over our engagement with everyone and with Nikki and Sarah's guidance and help. We curated a number of community engagement sessions last summer. Many of you probably participated in some of those, and we want to thank you for that. All of that information was extremely helpful, and you'll see it reflected in our feasibility report, which I'll share with you in a moment. But some of the goals for why we wanted to talk to everyone. We wanted to understand the place, and Don mentioned we're from New York, so we need to really dig in and understand what makes Alta, and what are the needs of the community? What do people need, and what do they want to see in the community center, a place that's designed to support them? So we had many work sessions. We had small work sessions where we tried to get to know folks on an individual basis, and then we had larger workshops where we began to talk about aspirations. What do you want your community center to be? What does it feel like? What does it do? What's the community center's role in the town of Alta? What should it do? What are the aspirations that would make it a success for you? But also to figure out what's in the building. What do you need? What could help you and the future generations of Alta? We talked to over several months. We talked to about 100 people through kind of virtual engagement process like these, through Zoom. We also created a website, which I'll share with you in a moment, which has been helpful, sort of hopefully keeping folks up to date, knowing what we're up to in our process, but also giving folks who might not be in town or be able to catch one of the meetings a chance to participate and voice their thoughts and concerns. One of the initial things that we did, sort of both from the things that we discussed in our community workshops, but also through refining these words with our advisory committee, we set a series of guiding principles for the community center. And these are really benchmarks to say what makes the community center a success at the end of the day. How should it perform? What are the things that it needs to do for it to have fulfilled its goals? And some of the things that we talked about and set as aspirations are, the center really needs to be a resource for the community to gather for the well-being of its members. Well-being, is both physical and mental and social. So it really needs to support all of these things. The other aspect that we discovered was that the center needed to tell the story of Alta, including its history and ecologies, and educate folks who might come to visit the town about its ongoing stewardship. We understand that Alta is in a very sensitive, ecological place. And it's important to understand as you visit there and as you live there, how to treat the land with respect. We also wanted the center to be financially sustainable, but also environmentally sustainable, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Unfortunately, I can't cover all of this tonight, but I'll point everyone to our report where you can dig in a little bit deeper, and you can see all of the benchmarking that we did to get into those topics. In our conversations with the community, we came up with a series of themes for how the center could perform and its programmatic aspirations. That was to gather, to bring people together. It needed to be a center of wellness for people to get both physical and mental wellness. A space for education. Nikki talked about that, both from the perspective of the kids in the town and the families, but also the adults. A lot of the programs that Sarah and ACE runs would be supported here, which are really about keeping everyone active and fresh. One of the other aspirations was to educate people about the environment and the place that they're in. There's also a need for the building to support the town as a trailhead, that folks who are visiting and hiking, or in the winter, backcountry skiers who might need a place to use the restroom, and use that as a way to educate them and help them along the way. And then, Dan touched upon avalanches, but we wanted to design the center to be a place of resilience for the community. So we talked a lot about what that means for the various different levels of resilience, both from a sort of power and water perspective and beyond. So a little bit more about the program, what we determined. And I think this diagram begins to suggest an organization as well as tell you a little bit about the place. We wanted a lobby. The town wanted a place that felt, place you'd come in and grab a cup of coffee, but you might run into your neighbor. So a town crossroads, that's the lobby and the lounge. So you can see around that lobby, coffee and retail shop, the changing gallery, the post office. We wanted that place to be infused with Alta-ness. So we talked to the Alta Historical Society about how we might begin to display some of their artifacts and exhibits. So, you could casually learn about the mining history or the avalanche prevention history of the town or its ecologies or geologies. And then there are all these places for gathering. One of the needs we determined was for a multi-purpose hall. We sort of, working with the advisory committee, we right-sized it. It's about 4,600 square feet, which from folks who have participated in some of the town events is about 4 times the size of Our Lady of Snows. That's about 1,300 square feet. So it's quite a big space. And one of the reasons for it to be so big is to be able to both have the entire town in there at one time for a film festival or a gathering, but also something that could be subdividable and something that could be rented out. A place to host conferences could be a place to generate some income for the community center. In addition to that sort of primary multi-purpose space, which has lots of different functions, we talked about educational spaces, an ACE education space for ACE to run their programs and conferences, a teaching kitchen. In addition to that, a wellness room, a fitness room for yoga and other physical activities. And then we also talked a lot about the Alta School and the needs of the school and how we could support the programs that Nikki runs and the needs of the students. And we began to think about how does that, how do those two different populations start to begin to occupy the same building, and begin to think about how could we make more out of all of these spaces by putting them together. Are there synergies between the Alta School and then the public library reading room? Are there synergies between ACE education space and the school? How could we make the most out of bringing everyone here together? In addition to that, there's a lot of support that needs to be there to run the community center, including the non-for-profit offices, but a lot of maintenance and support, which has been included. Again, this is just a brief overview. A lot of detail and thought has gone into the programming of the community center, which you can see in the final report. So with that, I want to take you a little bit to some of the exciting parts. Talk to you a little bit about design, and this builds off of what Dan was talking about, which is really the primary driver of designing a structure on that site, which is the avalanche forces. You could really see in Dan's comparison the scale of and magnitude of those forces, and as folks who have been through avalanche events understand really what we're talking about. What we wanted to do, we took a bit of an investigative approach. Initially at the outset, we said, how could we deal with a site at the base of a mountain that is prone to avalanches, and what does that do to the cost, the potential cost of the building? It's a community center. It needs to be respectful of its resources. So how can we manage that? And we came up with lots of different ideas. Could you embed the building within the hillside, allow an avalanche to flow over the top? Could you create a shed that flows, again, the avalanche over the top, but creates a protected outdoor space? Could you break the building up into pavilions and divert the avalanche flows around it? Or could you lift the building up and allow the avalanche to go underneath? We investigated all of these, and through a series, again, of community meetings, we presented a lot of these to folks, and we got a lot of great feedback. This slide just shows one of the many meetings that folks participated in. We developed these ideas, and we showed you what that might start to feel like, at the center of the town of Alta. How does that represent the town? What do you see as most valuable to you in the design of the community center? We wanted this feasibility study and concept design to really hit those marks, and we did that through discussions. This particular one is from last October. So as I mentioned, we initially came up with 4 concepts called embed, shed, channel, and lift. And very quickly with our discussions with the town, a couple of them dropped away. But 2 of them, and for the folks who were on that call, I think we had a really great kind of spirited conversation about the nature of building within the hill, making the building, kind of embedding it within the hillside and the values that that might have, but also this idea of lifting the building up out of the path of the avalanche, and what does that mean for the character of the building, and how it presents itself to the world. So these are just some summaries of the conversations that we had. You know, folks really felt like the embedded concept really blended more into the landscape. It felt more natural and more to scale. Folks also really liked that it had a kind of outdoor space, a kind of plaza space that was meant for gathering. The lift concept, I think folks thought it was really inspiring. I think, but at the end of the day, I think folks felt that particular design felt too different from the surroundings. It didn't really kind of respect the landscape as much as the embedded scheme, which is really what drew people to it. So I think this quote really helped kind of guide us. And that was from one of our meetings, you know, that Alta's greatest strength is its landscape and its setting, and the center should accentuate that. We really took that to heart. So we took that embedded design, we developed it, we met with folks again, we really tried to figure out how could we make this, you know, high performing from a sustainability perspective. How could we develop it to respond to concerns about maintenance and constructability? How could we fit Dan's structure in there? What we learned from that process is that's pretty expensive. What we learned from doing that was by burying the building in the hillside, the structure and the depth that you would need to support those forces that Dan described were of such a magnitude that they were, the beams were difficult to transport up the canyon. You know, you can see here, we went through the exercise, we priced this idea. We wanted to do due diligence, and you can see here a kind of range of cost per square foot. I mean, building in the valley we know is very expensive, but this was at a kind of range of cost that we were expressed some concerns, and the advisory committee had some concerns about how we could really support a cost and scale and magnitude of something like that. So we went back, we took a look at what, Harris, you want to jump in?
Yeah, Jarrett.
Yeah.
We're getting close to 6. I'm going to suggest that we
Okay.
figure going to 6:15.
Okay.
So that you can finish your presentation about the process and outcomes.
Okay. Thanks, Harris. So I'll try to go faster. We took a look at what would that mean? Could we reduce the footprint of the building to get it back within a budget that was reasonable and approachable? And we learned that by doing that, we could do that. We would have to reduce that program that we talked about by about 15%, which is about 3,200 square feet. So it's a chunk of space. The other things that we learned in conversations with our colleagues at Big D, who are contractors and construction managers, and who are very adept at building in this part of Utah, they were really concerned about how water flowing down the mountain was going to become a long-term maintenance concern for a building that was built into the hill. And we wanted to kind of think more about that and think about how we could improve upon that situation. So we went back to the lift concept. We took another look at it. We discussed it and reviewed it with the advisory committee. We priced it. So you can start to see here the cost per square foot for the embedded concept versus the lift concept is quite substantial. You know, by lifting the structure out of the path of the avalanche, what that really does is it allows us to build much more lightly. The structure can be much more modest in terms of scale, much more normative. So we wanted to explore that a little bit more, and we thought what we could do is take the feedback that we heard from those initial community conversations about how the community wanted the building to fit into the landscape and really reflect the topography and the slope of the place and accentuate the landscape. We wanted to embed that with this approach that we knew to be a lower cost, therefore better value to the town, a lower carbon footprint. So from a sustainability perspective, a lighter structure means less concrete, which is a high carbon sink. A lighter fundamentally touch to the landscape. There's much less excavation with an approach of lifting the building up and putting it on pylons. You're not building a deep foundation and a slurry wall. And ultimately, less exposure to snow and the long-term concerns of water. And also by lifting up, you have better access to light and views. And we understood from a lot of our conversations that really, that having light and views is really important to meeting some of the criteria, the guiding principles that I mentioned at the beginning, which is all about health and wellness. And I think light and view is really at the center of that aspiration. So we wanted to share with you today how we took that idea of the lift that we knew to be a kind of an approach that was effective, affordable, and maintainable for the town, and how we've evolved it based on what we've heard through our conversations. So here, just showing you again the footprint of the site. You can see it's stretched out along the State Road 210 there. You can see its proximity to the Alta town offices and a potential connection to a trail here on the north. One of the things that we wanted to do is go back to this sort of foundational idea that Alta's greatest strength is its natural setting and its landscape, and that the center should accentuate it. So rather than a kind of a large floating box, what we wanted to do was actually begin to acknowledge the topography of the site. For folks who have been there, it's not just a unidirectional slope. There's actually a lot of topography and movement to the site. So we wanted to reflect that. We wanted to follow the topography and actually create a building that responded, and it was sort of keyed into the side of the mountain. And so you can start to see that form here. We made it a lot more narrow, a lot more skinny. We pulled it off of the street, so it was further back. It was less encroaching upon Little Cottonwood Canyon Road. And then we folded it. We bent it back and forth to really respond to the kind of inherent architecture of the landscape, if you will. And I want to show you the other thing that I mentioned. By lifting the building up, you suddenly have access to really kind of unparalleled views up and down the canyon. And the shape of the building begins to respond to that, sort of angles out to get canyon views down towards Salt Lake, and then in the other direction, views up the canyon. So really taking advantage of that and creating new ways to see and enjoy the landscape and the place that we've come to know. You might ask, well, if you lift the building up off of the ground, how do you get up there? That's a good question. So what we've done is we've designed here a entry plaza and elevator and staircase. So one of the other aspects that we learned from many of our community meetings is we really needed to have a place outdoors that could be used by the community, could also be used by the school, and that was protected from the street. So we built up a plaza. We're proposing to build up a plaza here. You can see you ramp up so you get above the height of the traffic, and this becomes a place, a kind of town square, if you will, where you can choose to go up to the community center, or you could choose to go up and access one of the trails. Here we've located the trailhead here, so it's easily used for both folks who are hiking, but also backcountry skiers. So keeping that close to the ground, really accessible, but then also providing a forecourt for events that could be had in places for the community to come together. So you come up an elevator, building is sat on piers. I don't know if I mentioned before, but the other nice thing it does is it sort of covers all the parking. So for folks who know Alta well, parking is a big issue, and we wanted to make sure that we met the needs on the site for the parking for both what was there, but also what the community center would need. So as you arrive, the main way you come into the building is through elevator or through stair. You sort of enter on the west side of the building. We did that strategically, one, because we wanted to both give the Alta School a dedicated entrance. So you can see here, Alta School faces west, looks down the canyon back towards Salt Lake. It's a very aspirational place to go to school and to think about the views down the canyon. But also it gives the ability to kind of separate out the sort of traffic and the need of privacy of the kids and the school groups from the use of the community center. So this elevator is sort of two directions. You can also elect to come through the main entrance here. There's a information desk where you can get information. You can see the local post office. And then the lounge I mentioned before, that's really the heart of the community center. And what we tried to do was to line the lounge with really active programs, so that even if you're coming to grab a cup of coffee or to hang out with your friend, you're more likely to bump into someone that you might know. So you can see here, cafe, the teaching kitchen, and changing gallery here and reading room. The other thing that we wanted to take advantage of about being up so high is really an access to outdoor space. You can see here along the south side of the building is a generous porch. So when the weather's quite nice, you can imagine this lounge sort of opened up with terrace doors and have indoor access to outdoor space and views. Moving down the plan, you can start to see here the multi-purpose room that is configured horizontally. It has dividable walls, which allows it to be used in multiple ways. It can be all opened up together, or it can be broken down and used for different functions. Wellness room. The way that we've organized this plan is that everyone has views looking south. This whole long perimeter is glazing. As Dan mentioned, the upslope part of the building really needs to be solid to really protect it from those avalanche forces. So there are modest windows here, but they're of a different type and quality. We're really trying to focus on views and access to light to the south. In addition, you can start to see here the not-for-profit office suite and conference spaces. So let me speed through this a little bit. There's a little bit more detail in the plans, but if anyone wants to take a closer look, please, I encourage you to look at our feasibility study. It has all of the details and concepts here. So this diagram we like to show because it really sort of sets the stage and gives you an understanding of what it looks like when you begin to lift the building up off of grade, create great access to light and to views, pull it off of the highway, and allow that avalanche path and that flow, that potential destructive force to run underneath it. So this building here doesn't have to have the massive infrastructure that building underneath that slope would have to. So this allows us to build much more efficiently and much more sustainably. We could build with wood. We've been talking about ideas of using cross-laminated timber. That's all because we've lifted the building up and given enough space here to ensure that the building would not be impacted by an avalanche. There are lots of other sustainable aspects to the building design, which I won't get into, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a tour of the community center. So this is a view at the Alta Lounge. This is the heart space where you come in. You can begin to see the height of the ceilings, the view into the mountains. You can really see how the building begins to respect the landscape by actually providing views and access of it. And you can imagine that this place, wants to feel really warm, really comfortable, as a place you want to come to and hang out in, and it feels great, and you connect with your neighbor. A view of the school, you can start to see here at the end. It's got that location that looks again back down the canyon with two sides of glass that that really gives a great and inspirational place for the Alta School, with great access to light, great access to views. And you can start to see here, we're speculating how we might begin to configure that. The multi-purpose space I mentioned is going to be really important for a lot of the ACE events, but also as a revenue generator for the community center. It's a really unique place, a really unique space that could be capitalized upon to support the community center. And the scale and size of the place really allows for everyone to come together. The wellness room, the yoga room, again, we wanted to pay attention to make sure that every single space in this building had great access to light, great access to views, and that's really because we've lifted it up and pulled it out of the ground. With that, I want to show you what it begins to start to feel like. I mean, this is a conceptual idea, but you can see here how the building is lifted up off of the highway, out of the avalanche forces. But as I mentioned before, we start to fold it and bend it, respond to the topography, really reflect the edge of the valley and its place. We wanted to express it being made out of wood so that it feels warm, that it feels welcoming, doesn't feel austere. We wanted to clad it in metal because metal was resilient, but also light colored. So it felt like it reflected the sky and really took on those characteristics and celebrated the space. You can start to see here the entry plaza, here the elevator that takes you up to the front door, the path that leads you up to the trailhead here. We also wanted to understand, what does this space feel like during the winter? What does it feel like covered in snow? And there's a lot of positive aspects that I didn't describe about this concept, having to do with it being very easily maintainable. The roof you can see here is sloped back into the hill, so much like a traditional metal standing seam roof, snow can be either retained or it could flow off and be managed upslope. So we wanted to pay attention to those details and think about how this building situates in the landscape. As folks from Alta know, you get a lot of snow, so actually being up above that level of the snow ensures that you always have great access to light, great access to views, even in an avalanche event. And then here, a view looking back down the canyon, you can start to see how the shape of the lift really responds to the shape and the silhouette of the valley, and how it starts to create open space underneath for parking, but also for gathering. And then a view here at the entry plaza. So you can start to see here how we create a place for gathering that's lifted up off of the street, that's protected with landscape, that acts as a trailhead, restrooms, perhaps some environmental signage, but it could also be a great place for the community to come together, outdoors, protected by the building above. And then we wanted to leave you with this view, which we thought sort of embodied this idea of being lifted and being elevated, which is really the porch space that looks back down the canyon, which really sort of presents a new way of building in the town of Alta, something that's uniquely Alta and bespoke for its community and for its community center. And we couldn't help but talk about life elevated, because it sort of resonated for all of us and sort of reinforced a lot of those ideas and ideals that we were talking about. So I mentioned a website. We have a website. If anyone would like to learn more about the community center, take a look at the feasibility study, learn more about all of the conversations that we had, learn more about the lift concept. You guys still see me?
Yeah, we see. I see you, Jarrett, but you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I lost the screen. Can someone pull up the website? Elodie, do you have that? Or Masha?
I have it.
Okay, that's what happens when your computer goes to sleep after you talk so long.
Well, we also have a link on our website, don't we, Jen? I'm quite confident we do. And if we don't, we will certainly get it. It's www.altacommunitycenter.com.
Yes.
Yeah, .com. Okay. So Jarrett, thank you. Yeah, and so these are images from that full report, which is has the 360-degree views inside of it, and so you can actually walk through the design and see what it would feel like inside. A bit of the a video showing some of the development, and I don't remember how many pages this is, but it's dozens of pages.
124.
124. Oh, okay. So that's what that number was. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I just want to add one other note that in talking to the team, you know, the 19th century history of Alta is digging holes in the ground and spending your days in the ground and then having your town wiped out from avalanches. And the 21st century solution can't duplicate a 150-year-old or 130-year-old idea. So I think that Ennead has come up with a 21st century solution to some problems that the town has faced. I'll say one thing I didn't say up front is that the money we've spent on this design process so far did not come from the general fund, but it came from the impact fees that other developments have led to, and that they can only be used for certain kinds of expenses, and they have to be used within a certain period of time. And I am grateful to our staff. This was a general fund idea until COVID and the pandemic. And then when we needed to cut back on our budget substantially, we decided, some of the staff members came up with the idea of using the impact fee money for this. And so no general fund money has been spent. There's still a little bit left in the impact fee that we could use for the production of fundraising materials, which will be the next some of the next steps are to think about how we could raise the money to build this building. We have been working on a financial pro forma, so we have a sense of what the maintenance and operational expenses of the building would be. And although Jared didn't show it at the end, I think because of the time, we do have a construction timeline where the fundraising materials and the fundraising would take about a year, and if I remember correctly, a year or 15 months, and then we would have a couple of seasons to build. But the idea is that if we got going on this, we could have a community center potentially in 2024, which I think is a pretty exciting prospect. All right, I think we've covered what we wanted to do, and you know, we will be really interested in people's feedback. There wasn't a lot of chat activity tonight, but I'm sure that as people take a look at the communitycenter.com, altacommunitycenter.com, they'll have more ideas about that. And I guess I should just say thank you to everybody who participated on the panel. And I really appreciate the attendance of the attendees. And we look forward to your feedback, comments, questions. We'll have a GoFundMe page perhaps and contributions. Jarrett, did you want to say anything at the end, or maybe John Goldner, our town administrator, wants to close us out?
Well,
John
let me.
Yeah, Jarrett, go ahead, and then John, and because John knows more about the history of this kind of project than anybody.
Well, let me just say, you know, thank you to everyone who's again been involved, who's taken their time to listen to us and to talk about design and program and aspiration with us. It's been really kind of magical for us, and we really, really appreciate it. And thank you to John and Harris and everyone who's been a part of this process. John?
Well, this will turn into a thank you fest. So, but this is really, you're right. It has been a magical process. And, you know, for years, nobody in Alta agrees on anything, except everybody's always wanted a community center. So, but it's always just been a dream. And then finally, after 15 years of working with the Forest Service, we get the land. And now we've got this feasibility study. And when I listen to the mayor talk about 2024, it's like, holy Moses. This isn't just a dream. This could really happen. So thank you. And I would encourage everybody who's watching this to send in comments, questions, you know, and we'll look at those and have answers for you all. So please stay involved.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jen, for putting together the technology to get this going. I think it was, we've learned a lot in what, 14 months about how to work on Zoom. And so, okay, everybody, thank you, and have a good evening.
Very much.
Good night, everyone.